Hello everyone, and welcome to my Sister Wives For You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Robyn's ultimate betrayal, the one the world always suspected but the Brown family never saw coming, has finally exploded into the open, and it's now clearer than ever that the real reason the entire Sister Wives family fell apart wasn't random tension, wasn't natural distance, wasn't the stress of polygamy, but a carefully constructed master plan orchestrated by Robyn Brown from the moment she stepped into the family, a plan designed to dismantle every existing bond until Cody belonged to her. And her alone, and insiders who have watched the family crumble piece by piece are now saying that everything, every tear, every fight, every shocking meltdown, can be traced back to Robyn's slow, quiet, methodical takeover that no one recognized until the destruction was irreversible, and the irony is that Robyn always presented herself as the peacemaker, the soft-spoken new wife who supposedly wanted unity, but behind the scenes was meticulously pulling strings that separated Cody from Mary, distanced him from Janelle, severed him from Christine, and eventually left the family in ruins, because, according to insiders who lived through the chaos, Robyn knew exactly what she was doing when she took the role of the favorite wife and leaned into it, fueling Cody's growing resentment toward his original wives by constantly feeding him narratives about loyalty, respect, and commitment that subtly implied the other wives were failing while she was the only one truly devoted. And while Cody believed he was simply following his heart, the truth is he was being guided, gently, consistently, and deliberately, toward a future where Robyn was positioned as the unquestioned queen of the Brown family empire, and evidence of her master plan becomes unmistakable when you trace the timeline back to the earliest cracks, the legal divorce from Mary under the guise of adopting Robyn's kids, which insiders now say was the biggest red flag because the adoption could have happened without divorcing Mary, yet Cody pushed for it because Robyn framed it as the only way to protect the children, and once Mary was pushed out of her legal position, the shift in power was seismic, granting Robyn unprecedented control over financial accounts, influence over family decisions, and direct access to Cody in ways the other wives simply didn't have, and from there, the fractures only deepened, with Robyn insisting on more one-on-one time with Cody, reinforcing the idea that their relationship was more harmonious, while subtly fueling Cody's frustrations with Christine's independence, Janelle's practicality, and Mary's emotional needs, slowly reshaping Cody's worldview until he genuinely believed that the family wasn't falling apart because of favoritism, it was falling apart because the other wives couldn't measure up to Robyn's standard of obedience and devotion. A narrative he repeated publicly and privately until the family no longer recognized itself, and perhaps the most devastating example of Robyn's influence was during the infamous 2020 to 2022 pandemic era, when Cody went from a flexible, community-focused father to a paranoid enforcer of rules that only Robyn seemed comfortable with, and while the world watched Janelle and Christine struggle to keep their kids connected, sources close to the situation later whispered that many of those extreme rules came directly from Robyn, who allegedly used the pandemic as an opportunity to keep Cody isolated with her household, controlling his environment, controlling his relationships, and controlling the entire family dynamic while the other wives were left fighting for attention and emotional scraps. And even though viewers initially believed Robyn was simply rule-oriented, the truth that has since emerged reveals a much darker strategy. The enforced isolation became a weapon, a way to deepen the divide until reunification was impossible, and when the cracks finally erupted into full collapse, Christine leaving, Janelle walking away, Mary reaching the point of emotional exhaustion, Robyn publicly cried and insisted she never wanted this, yet her own behavior at those pivotal moments raises even more suspicion, because while she claimed to be heartbroken, she simultaneously clung to Cody tighter than ever, framing herself as the last loyal wife, the victim of the other's supposed selfishness. And observers now say that her sadness wasn't for the family that was breaking but for the narrative slipping out of her control, because once Christine walked out and exposed the favoritism, Once Janelle said publicly that the marriage was no longer viable, and once Mary admitted she had been pushed out long before anyone acknowledged it, the public finally began connecting the dots. Robyn had worked so hard to keep separate, and the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a family falling apart naturally. This was a family being dismantled step by step, relationship by relationship, until only Robyn remained standing beside Cody while everyone else was emotionally, spiritually, and financially burned out. And the saddest part of all is that the original Brown dream, the dream Cody, Mary, Janelle, and Christine built decades before Robyn ever entered the picture, was a dream built on teamwork, shared sacrifice, and genuine love. But the moment Robyn entered the family and began painting herself as the misunderstood outsider, the family dynamic shifted from cooperative to competitive, with the original wives constantly battling for emotional scraps while Robyn positioned herself as the only source of peace, portraying the others as unstable or jealous. And today, as the dust settles and the family stands shattered in every direction, many fans are finally admitting what they suspected all along. Robyn's innocent victim routine was the most effective manipulation of all, allowing her to play the role of the sweet, misunderstood wife, while quietly pushing the others out one by one, gaining the life she wanted, a monogamous marriage disguised as polygamy, without ever having to admit that she engineered it. And insiders claim the final confirmation of Robyn's master plan came when she and Cody openly began discussing the idea that polygamy was never meant to be. A statement that devastated longtime viewers who remembered how passionately the family once defended plural marriage, and insiders believe Robyn encouraged this shift. Specifically because it allowed her to secure Cody as her sole partner without ever having to admit she never wanted to share him. And now that the other wives have left and the truth is finally out, the world can see the pattern. The subtle distancing, the emotional manipulation, the legal restructuring, the pandemic isolation, the financial consolidation, the quiet tears that always seem to shift blame onto everyone but herself. And when you add it all together, the real reason the Brown family fell apart becomes shockingly clear. Not because polygamy failed, not because the original wives grew resentful, not because Cody simply changed, but because Robyn's ultimate betrayal was never her tears, never her victim narrative, never her claims of wanting unity, but the hidden ambition she carried from the moment she entered the family. An ambition to reshape the family into a structure that benefited her alone. And now, with the family irrevocably fractured and the truth surfacing everywhere, the question isn't whether Robyn orchestrated the downfall, but how long she can maintain the image of innocence while the world watches the consequences of her master plan continue to unfold. And even as Robyn continues insisting publicly that she didn't break the family, more sources closest to the Browns say that the signs of her influence were visible long before the collapse became undeniable, because the shift in Cody's personality, from a husband who once moved mountains to keep his marriage's balance to a man who openly declared he had no loyalty to wives who didn't obey him, lined up almost perfectly with Robyn becoming his emotional gatekeeper. And while Robyn portrayed her constant closeness with Cody as normal marital bonding, insiders now say she carefully controlled what Cody heard, saw, and believed about the other wives, and a particularly alarming pattern began emerging during family discussions. Every time the original wives expressed hurt, or fear, or concerns about being marginalized, Robyn would subtly discredit them by suggesting they were misinterpreting Cody or twisting things, which allowed her to present herself as the only wife who truly understood him. And Cody, desperate for validation amid his growing insecurities, clung to Robyn's interpretations with increasing dependence, unknowingly allowing her to become the filter through which he viewed his entire family, until he slowly started believing that the other wives were the problem, not the dynamic that Robyn had introduced. And perhaps the most chilling detail that has surfaced is how Robyn allegedly knew exactly how to weaponize vulnerability, because while she cried often and easily, her tears always came at the precise moments when Cody was about to take responsibility for his actions, derailing the conversation and shifting sympathy toward her, a pattern that infuriated Christine, devastated Mary, and exhausted Janelle to the point of numbness. And each time Robyn cried, Cody's attention snapped instantly to her, creating a cycle where Robyn's emotions held more weight than the genuine pain of the other wives, and eventually the wives simply stopped trying to speak up because every conversation ended with Robyn crying, Cody comforting her, and the original wives being painted as aggressors, and that dynamic, according to people who lived through the emotional fallout, was one of the biggest factors that pushed the marriages to the breaking point. And it wasn't just emotional manipulation. The financial side of the story is perhaps the darkest part of all, with revelations surfacing that much of the family's money eventually funneled into Robyn and Cody's household under the guise of family needs, leaving Janelle, Christine, and especially Mary scrambling to regain financial independence once the marriages fell apart. And even though polygamous families typically operate with shared resources, the financial transparency that held the Browns together for decades evaporated once Robyn entered the picture, replaced with secretive discussions and unilateral decisions that benefited Robyn's home far more than the others. And while Cody later complained publicly that the wives weren't contributing enough, the truth, according to multiple insiders, is that the wives were contributing plenty, but the resources weren't being distributed fairly, leading to resentment that Robyn deflected by insisting the other wives just didn't understand how expensive raising kids was. Even though Christine and Janelle raised far more children with far fewer resources, and this financial imbalance grew so severe that by the time Christine left, she admitted openly that she had nothing left to give because every time she tried to invest in her own future, she felt pressured into supporting the family structure that ultimately favored Robyn. And Janelle later confirmed that she walked away with almost nothing despite having contributed for decades, a revelation that fueled the belief among fans that Robyn's long game was to secure the financial foundation for herself and her children, regardless of how much it hurt the original wives. And the heartbreaking irony is that the family once prided itself on fairness, with the wives working together to make sure every household had what it needed. But once Robyn arrived, and once Cody became enamored with her quiet influence, fairness disappeared, replaced with a new hierarchy where Robyn sat at the top and everyone else was left fighting for the leftovers. And while many viewers assumed the wives were simply jealous of Robyn, new information suggests the jealousy narrative was actually one of Robyn's most powerful weapons, because she allegedly used it to convince Cody that any criticism of her was rooted in insecurity rather than legitimate concerns, allowing her to dismiss every complaint without ever addressing the underlying issues. And this tactic worked so effectively that even when Christine left, a moment that shocked the world, Robyn insisted Christine was acting out of jealousy, ignoring Christine's raw confession that she could no longer remain in a marriage where she wasn't respected. And even then, Robyn didn't attempt to repair the damage. Instead, she blamed Christine for the unraveling of the family, reinforcing the false narrative that the original wives were responsible for their own pain. And this refusal to acknowledge reality is what ultimately pushed Janelle to her breaking point, because she realized that no matter how hard she tried to maintain peace, she was always going to be framed as the problematic wife unless she surrendered to Robyn's version of the family, and that was something she could no longer do. And as the years went on, Robyn's mask began to slip little by little, particularly as fans noticed that she seemed far more concerned with maintaining the appearance of unity than actually rebuilding trust. And whenever she spoke about the family collapse, her words often centered on how the situation affected her, how lonely she felt, how she was the victim of a broken dream, conveniently skipping over the ways her own choices contributed to the destruction. And many viewers found it hard to ignore how Robyn continuously framed herself as a martyr, a lonely wife left to pick up the pieces of a family she didn't break, even though the pieces she was picking up were shaped precisely by the decisions she influenced. And those closest to the Browns say that Robyn was extremely aware of her ability to spin narratives, especially in front of the cameras, where she knew Cody would later watch the footage, absorb her perspective, and adopt her version of events as the truth. And this behind-the-scenes storytelling is what ultimately shaped Cody into the man viewers see today, a man who defends Robyn at all costs, even when it means rewriting history, abandoning long-term marriages, and forsaking children who no longer recognize the father he once was. And now, with nearly the entire family fractured, with Mary gone, Christine remarried, Janelle rebuilding her life independently, and Cody and Robyn isolated in their mansion. The truth is clearer than ever. The Brown family didn't fall apart because plural marriage failed. It fell apart because Robyn's slow, deliberate, and devastating master plan succeeded, leaving behind the wreckage of a family that once stood as a symbol of polygamous success, but now serves as a cautionary tale of what happens when one person's ambition outweighs the love and loyalty of everyone else.